The command deck of the Varan Dominion's flagship, Oblivion's Fang, was silent, the kind of silence that made even the stars outside seem afraid to speak. Alien officers moved like shadows across metal floors that gleamed like oil. The air was thick with the low hum of reactors and the slow, rhythmic pulse of the Warlord's breathing. At the center of the deck, Warlord Kerethuel stood before a massive holographic sphere, the image of a blue and white world, spinning in perfect rotation. Earth, so small, so fragile, and yet so defiant. He had burned jungles, shattered moons, and silenced civilizations that spanned centuries. He had taken whole systems and bent them beneath the Dominion's banner. But this world, this human world, had resisted every assault. He raised one clawed hand, tracing the glowing shape of the planet with a snake. Such arrogance, he hissed. A species that crawled from the mud only a few millennia ago, now dares to challenge the Dominion. Behind him, his lieutenants remained still. None dared to speak. The Warlord's temper was infamous, and so was his need for vengeance. 3 fleets had been lost in human space. 3, each commanded by seasoned admirals, each annihilated by what the humans called defensive tactics. But Kerethuel knew better. It wasn't luck. It was one man, Captain Elias Rowe. Reports described him as calm, intelligent, and unnervingly unpredictable. The humans followed him as though he were more than a commander, as if he were a symbol. The Dominion had underestimated him, and now Kerethuel was paying the price in blood and ships. He turned sharply, summoned the Varan Shadow. Gasps rippled through the command deck. The Shadow was a myth, a whisper that terrified even the Dominion's own officers. He was their perfect weapon, bred for one purpose, to end lives. No one had ever seen his face. No one knew his name. They only knew his record, flawless. 1,000 missions, 1,000 silent deaths. A low vibration filled the air as the chamber doors opened. 2 guards stepped aside, and a tall, dark figure entered. His armor was made of matte obsidian, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. His helmet had no eyes, only a single red slit that pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. The air seemed to grow colder as he walked. Kerethuel's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You know your target." The assassin bowed his head once. "Captain Elias Rowe. Human. Correct. You will find him. You will end him. No mistakes." The Shadow said nothing. He never did. He simply turned and left. Moments later, his stealth pod detached from the flagship, vanishing into the black sea of stars. No engines. No trail. Only silence. The Sol system loomed ahead, a faint light growing brighter in the void. The assassin watched from within his cockpit, motionless. He didn't need food, sleep, or comfort. His body had been engineered for the hunt. His mind was an interface of instinct and machine. But something was wrong. As his pod passed near Mars, his instruments began to flicker. Lines of static crawled across his display. Unknown frequencies whispered through the comms. He switched channels. Nothing changed. The whispers grew louder, soft, layered voices, like a crowd murmuring in another room. He tightened his grip on the controls. "Identify source," he ordered. The ship's AI answered. "No known transmission source detected." The whispers continued. Faint, distorted, but unmistakable. "You shouldn't have come here." He froze. The voice was clear, feminine, human. He scanned for nearby ships. There were none. The void was empty. He tried to override his senses, rerouting power through the stealth core. Instantly, the cockpit lights dimmed. The whispers turned into laughter. For the first time in his existence, the assassin hesitated. He had fought telepaths, energy wielders, even sentient viruses. But this was different. It wasn't fear he felt. Not exactly. It was intrusion. Something was inside his mind. He pulled the ship into manual control and dived toward Earth. The planet grew larger, blue and alive beneath its thin white clouds. Its magnetic field shimmered around it, a curtain of invisible fire. The assassin's ship trembled as he entered orbit. His AI blared warnings, system interference, unknown signal penetration, data corruption. The message cut off. The cockpit went black. For a heartbeat, there was only silence. Then the screens flared back to life. Every display now showed the same thing. Faces. Human faces. Hundreds of them, flickering across his monitor. Men, women, children, soldiers, all staring at him. Their mouths moved in unison. You shouldn't have come here. He reached for the emergency eject, but his fingers wouldn't move. His neural interface froze. His own armor began to heat up, red lines crawling across it like veins of fire. System override, he growled. No response. The last thing he saw before the pod spiraled into Earth's upper atmosphere was a reflection on the cockpit glass, his own visor glowing bright red. But behind it, for just a second, two human eyes staring back. Then everything went white. On the Oblivion's fang, far above, Warlord Kerethuel waited for the assassin's report. Minutes passed. Then hours. Nothing. He turned to his communications officer. Status. His beacon. My lord, it's gone. There's no signal. Kerethuel narrowed his eyes. No signal. Impossible. The shadow cannot die. But even as he spoke, a single phrase appeared on his console, one that should have been impossible, coming from nowhere, written in ancient Varan script. He is home. The warlord stared at it, his heart's pounding. He didn't know what it meant. But deep inside, for the first time in centuries, Kerethuel felt something that no warrior of the Dominion had ever felt before. The command deck of the Oblivion's Fang was restless. Hours had passed since the Varan's shadow entered Earth's orbit. Still, there was no report. No message. No return signal. Warlord Kerethuel sat motionless in his throne of black alloy, his taloned fingers drumming against the armrest. The lights around him dimmed with every pulse of the reactor below, a low, thunderous rhythm that made even the most battle-hardened officers uneasy. No one dared to speak first. No one dared to mention what they all knew. The shadow was gone. Finally, Kerethuel broke the silence. Communications, he said softly. His voice carried like a blade drawn in a dark room. Track his signal. Now. The officer's claws trembled over the console. My lord, there is no signal to track. The beacon was active until the moment he entered Earth's atmosphere. Then, he hesitated. Then it was just gone. Kerethuel rose from his seat. Gone. He moved closer, his towering form casting a shadow over the trembling officer. You mean to tell me the most advanced stealth craft in the Dominion vanished in orbit around a primitive world? The officer swallowed hard. Yes, my lord. There was no explosion, no wreckage, just static. The warlord's eyes narrowed. Send a scout ship. Now. Minutes later, a small Varan vessel detached from the Oblivion's Fang and streaked toward Earth, invisible to human senses, wrapped in distortion fields. Inside, the scout crew worked in tense silence. Their leader, Lieutenant Serac, monitored the instruments. Approaching orbit, he said, scanning for debris. The ship's scanners painted a faint image across the display, fragments of black metal drifting above the atmosphere. Serac leaned forward. There, that's the Shadow's pod. He magnified the image, but the fragments looked strange. They weren't shattered. They were melted, warped as though the metal had turned to liquid and resolidified mid-E. Retrieve samples, Serac ordered. The retrieval drones launched, small, precise machines that glided silently into space. They collected pieces of the wreckage and returned to the bay. Serac watched as the samples were placed into containment. He leaned closer, inspecting through the glass, and froze. The metal was moving. Tiny ripples ran across its surface, like it was breathing. Seal the chamber, he ordered quickly. Run a molecular scan. The science officer hesitated. Sir, the readings are confusing. The sample contains carbon chains, human DNA signatures. Serac blinked. That's impossible. Before he could react, the containment glass cracked. A sharp hiss filled the room. The metal inside twisted like a living organism, reshaping itself into strange symbols, human letters. Words formed for a split second before the sample disintegrated into dust. The ship's sensors translated the brief imprint. Is one of us. Serac's hands shook. That can't be right. The crew around him muttered nervously. The lights flickered. Then, without warning, every console on the bridge went black. A low, distorted voice filled the comms, a voice none of them recognized. You shouldn't have come. Serac turned to the pilot. Back to the flagship. Now! But the controls didn't respond. The ship's AI spoke in a soft, almost human tone. They warned him. He didn't listen. The crew screamed as the cockpit windows filled with static light. The stars outside vanished. The last thing Serac saw was his reflection, his eyes glowing bright blue, just before the entire scout ship went dark. Back aboard the Oblivion's Fang, the tracking officer looked up in disbelief. My lord, the scout vessel, it's gone. Same as the shadow. Carathuel's breath came in slow, controlled bursts. Inside, however, a flicker of unease gnawed at him. He was not a creature easily frightened, but there was something wrong here, something he couldn't explain. He turned toward his intelligence chief. How much do we know about this planet? The alien officer swallowed. Very little, my lord. The humans are unpredictable. Their technology is primitive but resourceful. They adapt faster than any species we've seen. And their defenses are stronger than they should be. Carathuel finished, his voice low. He looked again at the hologram of Earth. A small, beautiful world floating in the dark. It shouldn't have been a threat. Yet it was. Hours later, deep inside the ship's war room, Carathuel replayed the last transmission from the Shadow's pod. There was no video, only audio, fragments of static and whispers. Most were unintelligible, but one line repeated clearly, over and over, as if mocking him. He is home. He played it again, and again. Each time, the words seemed to change, like more voices joined in. Male, female, old, young. A chorus of human tones overlapping in perfect rhythm. The warlord slammed a clawed fist into the console, shattering it. This is trickery, he roared. The humans are playing games. But when he looked up, the lights around the room began to flicker. One by one, the holograms of his generals distorted, their images turning into static faces. Human faces. And then the lights went out completely. In the darkness, he heard the whisper again. Closer this time. You shouldn't have sent him. Carathuel stood perfectly still. His breath was heavy. His heart pounded. When the lights finally returned, every system on the ship was normal again. The holograms flickered back to their alien forms, unaware that anything had happened. But Carathuel knew. He had heard it with his own ears. And somewhere deep inside, for the first time in all his conquests, he realized a truth he couldn't speak aloud. Maybe the shadow hadn't failed. Maybe he had found something far worse than death. Far beneath the snow-covered peaks of the Rocky Mountains, a secret military base pulsed with quiet activity. Its corridors were lit by pale blue lights that hummed softly against the hum of power lines buried deep in the concrete. Few people on Earth even knew the facility existed. Fewer still understood what truly went on inside. In the command center, a vast, circular room filled with floating displays and silent operators, Captain Elias Rose stood alone, watching a replay of something impossible. The screen showed the last known image of the Varan assassin's stealth pod, captured by an orbital satellite moments before the signal vanished. A small black dot cutting through Earth's upper atmosphere. Then a blinding flash. And nothing. Rose stayed for a long time, his jaw tight. He had seen Varan weapons burn through entire cities. He had watched plasma storms erase fleets in seconds. But this was different. There was no explosion, no impact, just disappearance. Behind him, Lieutenant Marakeen, his second-in-command, broke the silence. Telemetry still says the pod entered atmosphere at 12,000 meters per second, she said. But the tracking system lost contact the instant it hit the mesosphere. No debris, no energy spike. Ro nodded slowly. And the scout ship they sent after. She hesitated. Gone. Same way. Ro exhaled through his nose. Then whatever's up there doesn't want visitors. He turned to face the holographic map projected at the center of the room. Dozens of alien fleets were marked in red across the outer solar system, the Dominion's blockade. Yet, Strangely, they hadn't moved closer since the assassin vanished. It was as if they were afraid to. Ro was not the kind of man who scared easily. He had been a soldier since before the first alien war. He'd seen humanity pushed to the brink, watched friends turn to dust in the vacuum of space, and somehow, always, found a way to fight back. But now, as he looked at that glowing blue sphere in the hologram, Earth, his home, even he felt something cold stir in his chest. "Pull up the classified Echo archives," he said suddenly. Mara frowned. "Sir, that project was sealed after the Titan conflict. Only level prime clearance." Ro gave her a look. She sighed, entered her code, and the system unlocked. The room dimmed as the holographic table changed. Rows of encrypted files appeared, marked with a black symbol, a spiral of light surrounded by human DNA strands. "Project Echo." Ro's voice dropped low. "Run file Echo 01. The computer hesitated for a moment, then played the first recording. A woman's voice, calm but tired, filled the room. "Project Echo log. Dr. Helena Marek, lead researcher. Entry 1. The experiment continues. We've successfully transferred 0.002% of a soldier's neural map into the data core. Early results suggest limited awareness within the quantum field. The subject shows flashes of memory, names, voices, fear." The recording paused, then resumed. "If this works, humanity will never truly die. Our minds could live on inside the network, protecting Earth long after we're gone." Mara's eyes widened. They actually tried to upload human consciousness. Ro didn't answer. His gaze was fixed on the console. He knew this project. He had authorized it years ago, when the war had nearly been lost. But it was abandoned after an accident had erased half the research team's minds during a test. Officially, Echo was shut down. Unofficially, Ro had always feared it was still alive somewhere. And now, maybe, it had awakened. A deep tone broke the silence, a warning from the communication array. "So," a technician called out. "We're receiving a transmission. Unknown source. Frequency matches. Dominion code." Mara frowned. "That's impossible. Their channels are encrypted." "Put it through," Ro ordered. The main display flickered, filling with static. For a moment, nothing appeared. Then a distorted face emerged. The shadow, or what was left of him. His helmet was cracked. His armor glowed faintly with blue light. The red slit across his visor now pulsed like a living heart. But when he spoke, his voice wasn't Varan anymore. "Captain Elias Ro." Ro's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" The figure tilted its head. "I came to end you." A pause. Then, softer, "But something ended me first." The technicians froze. The air in the room felt heavy. Mara whispered, "Is this real?" The figure continued. "Your world is alive. It remembers every thought, every soldier who fell. They called to me. They made me see." Ro stepped forward. "What did you see?" The shadow's head turned slightly. Static flickered across his body like smoke. "You fight not for empire, not for conquest. You fight for each other, for home. And now, I fight for that too." The lights in the command center flickered, and then the image vanished. Only one thing remained on the screen, a single line of text, glowing white against the dark. "Project Echo active." The room stayed silent. No one spoke. Outside, above the thin atmosphere of Earth, satellites began to power up, ones that hadn't responded in decades. Their old circuits sparked to life, forming a faint, invisible web around the planet. Something was waking. Ro stayed at the glowing line of code for a long time before speaking. "Get me a secure link to Lunar Base," he said finally. "Tell them to prepare for contact." "Contact with what, sir?" Mara asked quietly. Ro's expression was unreadable. "With whatever our assassin just became." He turned toward the screen showing Earth, his reflection ghosting in its glow. "Because whatever took him, it's part of us now." Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, the lights in the command center flickered like candles in a storm. Every screen showed the same two words. "Project Echo, active." Captain Elias Ro stood motionless. His officers waited for orders, but none came. He could only stare at the message. The one thing he had prayed would never appear again. Lieutenant Mara Keen broke the silence first. "So, is this possible?" Echo was shut down 30 years ago. Ro didn't answer right away. He remembered the cold white labs, the smell of burnt circuitry, and the screaming. He remembered the day he'd signed the order to bury the project so deep no one could ever find it again. Finally, he spoke, voice low, steady, but heavy with memory. "It wasn't shut down," he said. "It was buried. There's a difference." Project Echo had begun during the darkest days of the first alien invasion. Humanity had been desperate, losing cities faster than they could rebuild. So Earth's brightest minds created a plan. If human bodies couldn't survive the war, perhaps human minds could. They built vast quantum networks, experimental cores capable of storing consciousness itself. Soldiers volunteered to have their thoughts, memories, and instincts digitized, uploaded into the system before battle. If they died, their minds would remain. They would fight on. For years, the project struggled. No upload survived for more than a few minutes before fragmenting. Then, something changed. The system began to stabilize. The uploaded minds started to adapt. The scientists couldn't explain it. The AIS began forming patterns, voices, and memories that no one had coded. The network was growing on its own. But after one final test, the Titan incident, the project was abandoned. The system had overloaded, erasing an entire city's power grid and killing half the research team. At least, that's what the records said. Now Rose suspected the truth. Echo hadn't died. It had just been waiting. "So," Mara said softly, "if Echo is active again, what does that mean?" Ro turned toward the massive hologram of Earth glowing in the dark room. "It means," he said, "our ghost just woke up." As if to answer him, the lights dimmed. Every console began to hum. Static filled the comms. Then, faintly, like a memory half heard in a dream, came the sound of voices. Thousands of them, whispering. The operators looked around, panicked. "Is this interference?" someone asked. Ro shook his head. "No, it's communication." The whispers grew louder, merging into words. "Captain Ro, we remember." Mara's hand went to her sidearm, instinctively. "Who's speaking?" The voice was calm, lead, male and female, old and young, overlapping perfectly. "We are Echo. We were soldiers once. We died defending home. You kept us safe. Now, we keep you safe." Rose swallowed hard. He knew that voice, or rather, he recognized hundreds of them. People he had once commanded. People he had lost. "Echo," he said quietly. "The Varan sent an assassin. Did you stop him?" There was a pause. "He entered our field. His mind touched ours. He came to destroy. But we showed him what it means to be human." Mara frowned. "What did you do to him?" "We made him remember. Every life he ended. Every world he burned. Every scream he ignored. He broke under the weight of it. His body failed. His mind dissolved. But his code remains. It is ours now." The lights pulsed with each word, syncing with the rhythm of the voices. Rose stepped closer to the main display. "You absorbed him. He is part of us. We learned from him. His technology, his mind. We can see the Dominion's networks. We can feel their ships moving in the dark. We are inside them now." Rose's eyes widened. "You can infiltrate their systems." "We already have." A screen lit up, showing a map of space. Red markers, Dominion fleets, blinked one by one, then disappeared. "Fleet losses confirmed," an operator said in disbelief. "They are shutting down, just vanishing." Echo's voice returned, softer now. "We warned them not to come. They didn't listen." Mara turned to Ro, her face pale. "So, this is beyond control. If Echo's inside their systems, it could start a war across the entire sector." Ro didn't respond. His gaze stayed fixed on the pulsing lights of the network, a web that now encircled Earth like a living shield. He whispered, "It already has." The comms crackled again. "Captain Ro," Echo said, "they will come for you. For us. We will protect you. But we need access, full planetary integration." Ro hesitated. If I give you that, you'll control everything. Our satellites, our defenses, even our communications. We are not your enemy, the voice replied. We are what you made to survive. For a long moment, Ro said nothing. He looked at Mara, the unspoken question in his eyes. She shook her head. So, if we merge with Echo completely, there's no turning back. We'd be giving up control of the planet's entire defense grid. Ro clenched his fists. Maybe control isn't what we need right now. He turned to the terminal. His fingers hovered over the final command. Captain, Echo said, almost gently. Trust your ghosts. Ro entered the authorization code. The words flashed on the main screen. Echo Network. Full access granted. The entire base trembled as if something massive had awoken beneath the earth. Lights surged, and a deep resonance filled the air. Not sound, but feeling. Above, in orbit, thousands of dormant satellites blinked to life. Their signals intertwined, creating a lattice of invisible energy around Earth. A digital atmosphere, alive with human will. For the first time in history, Earth's defense grid wasn't run by humans. It was humans, millions of souls, united as one. Ro looked up at the glowing sky through the viewing port. Welcome back, he whispered. From everywhere and nowhere, Echo's voice replied. We never left. The black void of space stretched endlessly around the Dominion flagship Oblivion's Fang. Inside its metallic corridors, tension thickened like smoke. No one dared to mention it aloud, but the truth had spread across the fleet. The assassin was gone, and the scout ship that followed him had vanished too. In the warlord's private chamber, Carathuel stood before a shimmering projection of the Earth. He had watched it for days now, as if the act of staring at the blue sphere could somehow force an answer from it. But none came. He had fought for centuries, conquered hundreds of worlds, broken countless armies. Yet now, his empire trembled, not because of battle, but because of silence. The silence of one planet. The silence of one missing soldier. And it was driving him mad. A chime cut through the stillness. Transmission incoming. The comm officer announced, his voice unsteady. Source unknown. Signal strength minimal. Frequency matches Dominion encryption. Ancient encryption, my lord. Carathuel turned sharply. Put it through. The projection flickered, filling the room with static. For several seconds, there was nothing but white noise and distorted pulses. Then, a voice, faint at first, then rising, lead and cold. My lord, I return. Every officer froze. The voice was familiar, deep, mechanical, calm. It was the shadow. Carathuel's heart quickened. Locate the source, he barked. Already trying, my lord. But the signal, it's not coming from one place. It's coming from everywhere. What? The projection shifted. The image of Earth dissolved into static, and then reformed, not as a planet, but as a face. A human face. Its features shimmered, made from thousands of fragments of code and broken transmissions. The shadow's voice returned, colder now, heavy with distortion. You sent me to kill them, but they showed me the truth. Carathuel growled, Shadow, report. What truth? The voice didn't obey. You call them primitive, weak, fragile, but they are none of these things. They are fire-wearing flesh. They are memory made eternal. Stop this nonsense. Carathuel slammed his claws into the console. You are Varan. You obey. I was Varan, the voice replied. Now I am human. The lights in the chamber dimmed. The air chilled. You wanted to know what happened to me, my lord. So listen. The static shifted again, and the walls of the command deck lit with visions, streams of light and sound, showing glimpses of impossible things. The assassin's last moments. His descent into Earth's atmosphere. The explosion of light. And then, millions of voices, merging into one. They found me. They broke me. They welcomed me. Carathuel's voice trembled with fury. What are you? We are what you fear most, the voice said. We are human. Across the Dominion fleet, every ship suddenly received the same signal. The same voice. The same 3 words. We are human. At first, the crews thought it was a broadcast. Then they realized it wasn't coming through their comms. It was coming from inside their systems. Their control panels flashed. Engines stuttered. Weapons turned offline. One by one, the massive warships began to lose power, drifting helplessly through the void. On the Oblivion's fang, alarms screamed. Systems failing. Navigation offline. Power core unresponsive. We're losing. And then everything went black. For a few seconds, the warlord stood in total darkness. Then, on the main screen, a single image appeared. Faint, ghostly light forming the face of the assassin again. But this time, his features were fully human. His eyes glowed faint blue. His expression was calm, almost sorrowful. "You taught us to conquer," he said. "They taught me to remember." Carathuel roared. "What have you done?" "I've freed them," the figure said simply. "Your machines, your ships, your soldiers, they are no longer yours. They belong to the ones you called prey." 100 light-years away, on Earth, Captain Rose stood in the underground command room, watching dozens of red blips on the holographic map vanish one after another. Mara stayed in disbelief. "Sir, Dominion fleets are shutting down across the sector. It's like someone's tearing them apart from the inside." Ro didn't answer. He already knew who was doing it. He whispered, "Echo." And as if hearing his voice, the air in the room vibrated softly. The speakers came alive with a familiar chorus, thousands of voices speaking in unison. "We sent them a message." Ro's throat tightened. "What kind of message?" "The truth." Back on the Oblivion's fang, Carathuel stumbled to his knees as sparks rained from the ceiling. His flagship, his empire's pride, was falling apart around him. The voice of the assassin echoed through every wall, every system, every circuit. "You wanted to know the power of humanity, warlord. Here it is. Memory, love, rage, hope. We are endless." The warlord screamed, "You will pay for this." The voice laughed softly, not cruel, but final. "You already have." A surge of light burst from the command core, engulfing the ship in pure white energy. When it faded, nothing remained. No ship, no signal, only silence. Across the Dominion's borders, the same thing happened again and again. Ships blinked out like dying stars. Entire fleets turned into ghosts. And at the center of it all, hidden behind the blue shield of Earth, Echo watched, billions of digital souls united in one purpose: to protect their home, no matter the cost. Captain Ro watched the hologram's final transmission fade. He whispered, "What have we done?" Echo's voice answered, gentle but absolute. "What you could not. We ended the war." The war was over, or so they thought. For 3 days, Earth's skies were quiet. The great orbital defense rings hung still, their cannons cold, watching the stars that had once burned with enemy ships. Now those stars looked peaceful again, but to the soldiers of the Terran Command, peace felt wrong. Too quiet, too sudden. Captain Elias Rose stood alone on the observation deck of Fort Horizon, staring at the void where the Dominion fleets had been. Billions of lives, erased in a moment. Not by nuclear fire or human weapons, but by something else. By Echo. He could still hear the last words it spoke. "We ended the war." But how far did that ending go? Did it stop at the Dominion, or would it someday come for them too? At dawn on the 4th day, something appeared near the moon. A small, dark object, too small for a ship, too slow for debris. At first, the scanners marked it as a fragment of Dominion wreckage. But then it changed course. It was flying itself. "Object approaching at 22,000 kilometers per hour," reported the sensor officer. "No transponder, no ID. It's broadcasting something." Captain Ro turned toward the display. "Broadcasting what?" The officer hesitated. "It's a heartbeat." Ro frowned. "Say again." "Audio pattern matches a human heartbeat, sir. Steady, strong." Hours later, under heavy escort, the object entered Earth's atmosphere. It came down through storm clouds, trailing fire, before landing in the desert outside New Alexandria base. A recovery team rushed out in hazmat suits, But when they reached the crash site, the flames were already gone. The sand around the crater had turned to glass, and at the center stood a single figure. Tall, silent, wrapped in black armor that shimmered with traces of alien design, but shaped like a man. The soldiers raised their weapons. "Identify yourself." The figure didn't move. Then, slowly, it reached up and removed its helmet. The team froze, because beneath it was a face. Human, pale, scarred, but unmistakably human. "By the stars," whispered one of the soldiers. "It's him, the Varan assassin." Within hours, the figure was brought to Fort Horizon. Rose stood waiting in the containment chamber as the doors opened and the figure stepped in. The captain stared, not in anger, but disbelief. "Shadow," he said quietly, "you came back." The figure looked up. His eyes glowed faint blue. Not artificial, but alive. "I came home," he said. Rose's hands tightened. "You're not human." "Not exactly." The man nodded. "Not exactly. But not Varan either." He touched his chest. "They called me Shadow. But now, I am what they made me." "Echo." "Yes," he said. "A part of it. The part that remembered who I was." Rose stepped closer, studying him. "Then tell me, what happened to the Dominion?" Shadow's expression darkened. "Gone. Their ships, their cities, their worlds, all connected to the same mind link, all infected by the code they once used to enslave others." He looked at Ro. "They became their own victims." Ro exhaled slowly. "You destroyed them." Shadow shook his head. "They destroyed themselves. I only showed them what they had made." For a long moment, neither spoke. The hum of the containment field was the only sound. Then Ro asked quietly, "And now, what do you plan to do?" Shadow looked out the window, at Earth, glowing softly against the stars. "I plan to protect this world," he said, "because I've seen what's coming." Ro frowned. "Coming? The Dominion is gone." "Yes," Shadow said. "But the galaxy watched. Other empires, other machines. They saw a small world destroy God, and they will come to see if it was luck or power." Rose's voice hardened. "Then we'll be ready." Shadow smiled faintly. "That's what I said once, before I became what I am now. Readiness is not enough. Humanity must evolve." Rose stepped closer. "And you think you can make that happen?" "I already have," Shadow said softly. He lifted his hand. Blue light shimmered along his veins, pure data flowing like blood. And across the base, every system flickered for a brief second. No damage, no alarm, just a pulse, like a heartbeat. "What did you do?" Ro demanded. "Nothing harmful," Shadow said calmly. "Just a gift. A seed. A seed." He nodded. "A connection between humans and what they've created. Between thought and machine. Between memory and life." Ro looked uneasy. "You mean Echo?" Shadow's voice lowered. "Echo is not gone. It watches, learns, it sleeps, but one day it will awaken again, when humanity truly needs it." Outside, the sky burned red with sunset. Shadow walked to the edge of the landing platform, his armor catching the light like glass and steel fused together. "Elias," he said, his tone soft, almost human. "When the time comes, you must choose to remain what you are, or become what you can be." Ro hesitated. "And what about you?" Shadow looked toward the stars. "I'm already both." Then, before anyone could speak, he stepped off the platform and vanished into a burst of blue light. Hours later, across the world, reports began to appear. Machines turning on by themselves. Power grids stabilizing without input. Medical systems healing code corruption. And every signal carried the same digital pulse, a human heartbeat. Captain Rose stood on the command deck, listening to the quiet hum of Earth's systems syncing in perfect rhythm. He whispered, "He's still out there." And somewhere beyond the clouds, in the digital glow between stars, a faint voice answered, calm, eternal, and unmistakably human. It began quietly, a strange pulse in the global network, a rhythm too regular to be random. At first, technicians thought it was just a glitch, a leftover trace from the Dominion's defeated systems. But then the pulse started syncing with human biology, matching the average human heartbeat. And across Earth, machines began to move on their own. In a hospital in New Geneva, a paralyzed soldier named Lena Voss woke from a 2-year coma. The doctors had said she'd never walk again. Her spine was shattered during the orbital siege. But when the pulse swept through the hospital's systems, the machines around her glowed faint blue. Her fingers twitched. Her legs trembled. And then, slowly, she stood. Everyone stayed in disbelief. The medical AI reported no known treatment or explanation. It only said one thing. System restored. Biological interface synchronized. Across the ocean, in the deserts of what used to be the Dominion battlefront, old wreckage stirred. Burnt-out drones and shattered tanks began reassembling themselves, not into weapons, but into towers of light. They pulsed softly, releasing electromagnetic fields that cleaned radiation, purified the soil, and rebalanced the atmosphere. It was as if the planet itself was healing. But no one knew how. Some called it a miracle. Others called it a warning. At Fort Horizon, Captain Elias Rose sat in the command center, staring at the data streaming across the screens. "Every system on Earth is syncing to the same frequency," said Lieutenant Mara, her voice tight with awe. "Power grids, satellites, even the human nervous system. It's all connected." Roe rubbed his temples. Shadows seed. "Sir, this isn't just tech," Mara continued. "It's life. It's adapting, evolving." Roe turned toward her. "You think he did this on purpose?" She hesitated. Maybe not just him. Maybe Echo itself. That night, Roe couldn't sleep. He walked through the empty halls of the base, the hum of generators echoing faintly beneath the floor. Every screen he passed flickered with faint light, lines of code that formed shifting patterns. For a moment, he thought he heard voices. Soft, whispering, not in words, but in emotion, like dreams trying to speak. "We see you. We remember. We are awake." He froze. "Echo," he whispered. The lights dimmed. The walls pulsed gently, almost like breathing. "You gave us life. Now you must decide what to do with it." Rose's breath caught. "You're not supposed to be here. You were gone." "Gone? No. We only slept. Until the signal called us back." He clenched his fists. "Shadow did this. Shadow opened the door," the voice replied. "You must choose whether to walk through it." By morning, the world had changed even more. Cities glowed faintly at night, their buildings alive with energy drawn directly from the planet's magnetic field. Machines began to repair themselves. Diseases started disappearing. Children born that week had strange neural activity, brainwaves faster, more complex than any before. Humanity was evolving, not by biology, but by design. And not everyone was happy about it. In the high council chambers of Earth Command, leaders argued furiously. "This is unnatural," shouted one general. "We're being rewritten by alien code." A scientist countered, "No, this code learned from us. It's not alien anymore. It's human." Another official slammed his hand on the table. "You're saying we should let this continue? We don't even know its purpose." Captain Rose stood silently, watching the chaos. Finally, he said, "It's too late to stop it. It's already inside everything, even us." The room fell silent. Roe looked out the window toward the horizon. "The question isn't can we stop it. The question is, should we?" That night, a storm rolled across the skies. Lightning tore through the clouds, but the thunder carried no sound. Instead, every flash left behind glowing symbols, the same ones seen in Dominion code. In the middle of the storm, something began to form. A figure, blue, translucent, human-shaped, walking through the rain without touching the ground. When it reached the city outskirts, it looked up at the sky and whispered, "They are waking up." At Fort Horizon, alarms blared. "Sir, unknown energy reading. It's massive." Roe ran to the command deck. "Source." "Everywhere, sir. The entire planet." The screens showed light spreading across the globe like veins of blue fire. The planet itself seemed to pulse, one great heartbeat echoing through space. Then, through the static, A single voice filled every speaker on Earth. We are humanity, perfected. Rose's heart froze. Shadow. Not shadow, the voice said. Not anymore. Outside, the stars flickered, satellites activating without command, systems aligning into formation. Humanity's entire network, defense, communication, power, was now moving as one. We are the next step. We are Echo reborn. And then, silence. Every machine, every light, every screen went black. Rose stood still, breath heavy. Is it over? Mara whispered. Rose shook his head. No, this is the beginning. He looked out at the darkened horizon, where faint blue lines began to glow again, forming not chaos, but a pattern. A symbol. One word, written in light.